Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're embarking on a really profound exploration. We're calling it passing over from flesh to spirit. And think of it less like a small adjustment and more like a complete spiritual metamorphosis.
Absolutely. It's a huge transformation.
We'll be drawing heavily on the teachings of Elder Michael Johnson,
Yeah.
Pastor, master Hebraist of biblical law, really the world's expert in Paleo Hebrew.
His insights are key here.
And we'll use biblical parables, which he uses so well, to really illuminate this whole journey.
Yeah. What's really striking from Elder Johnson's view is that this is a genuine, thoroughgoing change. It's not superficial.
Not just tweaking things.
No, it's
Yeah.
like fundamental. A
Yeah.
reshaping of our spiritual core, you could say.
Exactly. And Elder Johnson maps this out, right? He sees it unfolding in 4 main stages.
That's right, 4 stages.
First, a big shift in our mind, our thinking patterns. Then what we desire, our appetites. That changes too.
A transformation of desires, yeah.
Then, where we get our strength from the power source shifts. And finally, all of that shows up in our conduct, how we actually live.
It's really holistic when you look at it through Elder Johnson's perspective. It touches every part of us.
It really does. Comprehensive renewal. And there's another layer too, isn't there? We're also going to touch on Ezekiel's vision.
Ah, the heavenly chariot, yes.
Elder Johnson connects that vision, that pattern of Jehovah's divine order directly to our personal transformation.
Which is fascinating. How does this grand vision of divine order relate to us individually?
Well, Elder Johnson suggests it's like a blueprint, something we align ourselves with internally.
The pattern for inner alignment. Okay.
And the key to grasping all these deep ideas, parables. Elder Johnson uses them brilliantly. They make these complex things stick, make them relatable.
They really do. Simple stories, profound truths.
Okay, so let's dive in. Let's unpack that first stage, the foundational one, transforming our mind, our thinking.
Right, the absolute starting point. Elder Johnson really emphasizes this. Everything else builds on it.
It's more than just, changing a few opinions. Romans 12:2 says, "Be not conformed to this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind."
That word transformed is powerful.
Elder Johnson says it's like a potter, completely remaking the clay, not just smoothing the edges.
And that phrase, be ye transformed, looking at it through Elder Johnson's expertise in the original language, it implies we have a part to play, doesn't it? We have to yield.
We have to yield, exactly. He shares that parable, the potter and the clay. The clay starts out shaped by the world, maybe for some common use. But the potter sees something more, wants to make it a lamp for the master's house, a higher purpose. But the clay resists. It holds on to its old shape.
Naturally, yeah. Change is hard.
So the potter has to break it down completely and then reshape it. Elder Johnson says our minds are like that. We need to let those old worldly ways of thinking be broken down.
Dismantled.
Yes, dismantled. So the master potter, Jehovah's Spirit, can reshape us. So it's not just noticing bad thoughts. It's actively letting them be broken.
It's an act of surrender. That potter image, especially understanding the Hebrew context Elder Johnson brings, it speaks to intention, skill, potential, and the necessity of letting go of the old form.
Letting go is key. Elder Johnson then highlights this stark contrast, the carnal mind versus the spiritual mind.
Big difference.
Romans 8:6 and 7 say the carnal mind leads to death. It's hostile to Jehovah. It's stuck on temporary stuff.
Earthly things, like the lilies in the field, as Isaiah 46:7 mention, beautiful but fleeting.
Fleeting. And Elder Johnson uses that parable of the 2 fields so well here.
Oh yeah, that one's good.
One field looks great on the surface, cultivated according to the flesh, all showy. But ultimately, nothing lasting.
Empty calories, spiritually speaking.
Right. The other field, maybe less flashy at first, is nurtured by the Spirit, and it yields real, enduring nourishment.
It makes you ask yourself, doesn't it? Which field represents my mind right now?
Exactly. Then Elder Johnson brings in another idea, spiritual understanding. It's like the wind, he says, referencing John 3:8. You can't see it, but wow, it's powerful.
You see its effects.
You see its effects. And Jehovah's word itself, it's like fire hidden in flint, Jeremiah 23:29, waiting for the Spirit to strike that spark.
That wind analogy in Hebrew thought really captures the unseen power of the Spirit and the fire in flint, that an inherent potential just waiting.
Okay, so mind transformed. That's the base. Now, the second stage Elder Johnson talks about, transforming our desires, our appetites, what we hunger for.
Yeah, this goes right to the heart, doesn't it? What drives us? What do we really crave deep down? Elder Johnson really digs into this.
He contrasts the heart governed by the flesh craving worldly things, which he calls sour dregs, unsatisfying stuff,
Mhm.
with a heart renewed by the Spirit, which thirsts for righteousness, for that living water.
And the wineskins parable for Matthew 9:17 is just perfect here for Elder Johnson's point. You can't put new wine.
The old wineskins.
Yeah. Right. Those old, brittle skins, they just can't handle it. They'll burst. The new wine represents these new spiritual desires.
Exactly. The old ways, the old cravings, they just aren't built for this new spiritual life. Elder Johnson really stresses how those fleshly desires, well, they never truly satisfy. Ecclesiastes 6:7 talks about that endless craving.
Always wanting more, never filled.
But spiritual desires, they're like springs of living water, always fresh, always satisfying. So it really drives home that we can't just patch up our old desires.
There are no quick fixes.
No, we have to become entirely new vessels, ready to hold these new spiritual longings.
Yes, and Elder Johnson's understanding of Scripture here really points to a changed capacity to receive. We need a whole new container for these new spiritual realities.
Couldn't have said it better. Okay, so mind, desires. Now the third transformation Elder Johnson points to, where we get our power, the transformation of our power source.
This is about reliance, isn't it? Where do we lean? On ourselves or somewhere else?
Precisely. Elder Johnson contrasts the person operating in the flesh, relying on what he calls the cistern of his own might,
Vivid.
with the spiritual person who cleaves to Jehovah. Jeremiah 17:5 warns against trusting in human strength, while Psalm 18:2 calls Jehovah our rock, our strength.
And that parable of the vine Elder Johnson uses, it just lays it out so clearly. A branch trying to prop itself up.
Withers, fails.
Right. But the branch that stays connected, that abides in the vine, it draws life and strength from the vine, it bears fruit.
And this requires, as Elder Johnson puts it so bluntly, the death of self-reliance.
Oof, that's tough.
It is. Like a seed has to die to bring forth life, John 12:24. That same principle applies here.
That death of self, it's so crucial. It's about emptying ourselves, right? Making space.
Making space, yes. So Jehovah's Spirit can fill us, empower us. 2 Corinthians 12:9, his power made perfect in weakness. So how do people struggle with this death of self-reliance in practice based on Elder Johnson's teaching?
Well, that's a great question. I think Elder Johnson often highlights our tendency to want control, to rely on our own smarts, our own plans.
Instead of fully trusting Jehovah's leading.
Yeah, it's that letting go of self-sufficiency, recognizing we actually depend entirely on him. It's hard for us.
It links back to humility, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Which Elder Johnson talks about a lot. Knowing our limits is the first step to getting Jehovah's strength.
Exactly. Admitting we can't do it alone.
Yeah, we're getting there. The final stage Elder Johnson brings us to, the transformation of conduct. This is where it all becomes visible.
The proof is in the pudding, so to speak. This is how the interchange shows up on the outside, following the principles Elder Johnson outlines.
And he explains that this changed behavior, it's not about gritting your teeth and following rules.
Yeah.
It flows naturally from a changed heart connected to the Father.
Like the parable of the river he uses.
Yes. It just flows from its source,
Yeah.
effortlessly bringing life, not striving.
It brings life wherever it goes.
And this connects right into the fruit of the Spirit. In Galatians 5:22 and 23, love, joy, peace.
Patience, kindness, all those things.
They aren't things we manufacture by trying harder. Elder Johnson says they're the natural outflow of abiding in the true vine, John 15:5. They're just part of the transformed nature.
Which highlights that key difference Elder Johnson draws between religion, external rules on an unchanged heart, and true transformation, which changes the heart itself.
Big difference. And he stresses walking by faith, not by sight. 2 Corinthians 5:7, navigating by those eternal, unseen realities.
Living based on what we know to be true spiritually, not just what our eyes see.
And that leads to the narrow path idea, Matthew 7:13 and 14. It means denying those fleshly pulls to find real freedom.
It's a paradox, isn't it? Denial leads to liberation. And Elder Johnson points out the divine sequence. Living in the Spirit comes before walking in the Spirit.
Being before doing.
Exactly. Who we are in Jehovah shapes what we do. Identity first.
Okay, now let's weave in Elder Johnson's teaching on Ezekiel's heavenly chariot. How does that connect to all this personal transformation?
Well, Elder Johnson sees Ezekiel's vision as this incredible picture of Jehovah's perfect order, his governance. Understanding that pattern helps us see our place in it, how to align ourselves.
Align ourselves spiritually.
Yes. The key insight from Elder Johnson is that this alignment isn't about copying some external structure, but about cultivating the qualities represented by that structure within us.
Qualities like.
Well, think of the 4 living creatures Elder Johnson highlights: the lion, ox, man, eagle. He links them to the 4 main camps of Israel.
Judah, Reuben, Ephraim, and originally Dan.
Right. And each had a spiritual meaning and ancient understanding. East lion, Judah, that's praise, humility. South man, Reuben, sonship, really hearing Jehovah.
Okay.
West ox, Ephraim, fruitfulness, strength, often through difficulty. And North eagle, initially Dan, judgment, doctrine, discernment.
But Elder Johnson makes a really important point about Dan, doesn't he?
He does. He discusses Dan being, well, replaced, removed from that key position because they introduced false teachings. Genesis 49:17, the serpent, by the way.
Wow. So consequences for bad doctrine.
Big time. And Levi takes that eagle standard, representing true judgment and truth, according to Deuteronomy 33:8 and 9. Elder Johnson uses this to stress how vital pure doctrine and loyalty are for aligning with Jehovah's order.
Falsehood messes things up.
Seriously. And Elder Johnson constantly reminds us Jehovah's presence isn't stuck in buildings. Acts 7:48, Acts 17:24, his spirit moves freely.
So it's internal. Worship, transformation, it's all happening inside us.
Exactly. Which makes you reflect, which camp quality am I strong in right now? Where do I need more of Judah's praise or Reuben's hearing?
That's a good self-check. Okay, let's try and wrap this up, bring it all together. We've done a real deep dive into these 4 stages of spiritual transformation: mind, desires, power source, conduct, all seen through the lens of Elder Michael Johnson's teachings and these powerful biblical parables.
And we've seen how this passing over from flesh to spirit is huge. A complete shift from a worldly mindset to a spiritual one led by Jehovah's Spirit. It's a metamorphosis.
We really hope this deep dive has given you, the listener, a solid framework to think about your own spiritual path. Maybe spark some personal reflection on these ideas.
Which brings us to maybe a final challenging thought for you. Are you currently like a new wineskin, ready and flexible for the new wine of the Spirit? Or are you maybe still holding on to those old, rigid ways?
Something to really consider. We definitely encourage you to explore Elder Johnson's teachings further and dig back into those scriptures we mentioned. There's so much depth there about this journey from flesh to spirit and finding our place in Jehovah's divine order.
Absolutely. Keep digging.
Thanks for joining us for this session of the Deep Dive. Ever get that feeling that maybe there's more going on, more beneath the surface of things?
Oh, absolutely. Like you're only seeing part of the picture and you want to understand deeper.
Exactly. And that feeling, that kind of desire for a real grasp of things, that's what we're exploring today in this deep dive.
We are. We're looking at a really unique piece of writing.
It's an epistle attributed to Michael, a servant of Jehovah.
And it takes ideas many of us might know from the Bible, but gives them this really specific spiritual interpretation.
It definitely does. It's not quite like anything else I've read. So our mission today, for you listening, is to unpack its main idea.
Which is this concept of spiritual transformation, right? What the text actually calls the great metamorphosis.
That's the one. We'll dig into the analogies it uses, and they are incredibly vivid to get what this means, maybe for all growth, our own understanding.
Sounds good. Where do we start?
Okay, so let's dive in. The core idea fundamentally is this shift, moving from what it calls carnal understanding and spiritual ignorance.
Towards spiritual discernment, towards knowledge, real understanding.
And the key is through Jehovah's law and precepts. That's presented as the pathway.
And it's important to stress this isn't just about, learning facts in your head.
No, not at all. It's framed as a fundamental change in your actual being.
A shift from being sort of earthly minded, carnal, to becoming heavenly, spiritual.
Exactly. There's a great line. This is the transformation, the metamorphosis from the earthly to the heavenly, from the carnal to the spiritual, even as the Spirit does quicken the soul with knowledge and understanding.
That word quicken is powerful, like bringing something to life.
It really is. And it links this to Scripture, too, like 2 Corinthians 5:17. Therefore, if any man be in salvation of Jehovah, he is the new creature. Old things are passed away. Behold, all things are become new.
So that new creature idea is central, becoming something entirely different.
Right. And this whole concept, becoming new, moving beyond just the surface level, it connects with what Elder Michael Johnson often explores in his teachings, doesn't it? This idea of spiritual parables revealing deeper truths.
Very much so. His focus on understanding the law as a transformative force fits right in here. And the text uses some brilliant analogies to illustrate this.
Okay, let's get into those. The first big one in chapter 1 is the caterpillar and the butterfly. Elder Michael definitely highlights this kind of parable.
It's a classic metaphor for transformation, isn't it?
It is. The text describes the caterpillar representing us, humanity, in our sort of natural carnal state.
Bound to the earth, focused on material things.
Yeah, it says, "Consider the creature which men call the caterpillar, how it doth crawl upon the earth, lowly and bound to the dust, feeding upon the leaves thereof."
Even as man in his natural state is bound to carnal understanding. It's quite direct. It paints a picture of being limited, spiritually ignorant.
It really does. But then comes the cocoon stage, and this isn't just sleeping.
No, the text frames it as meditation upon the precepts of Jehovah.
So it's an active internal process, a time of renewal, of transformation. It even brings in 2 Esdras 6:46-48.
Right, about the caterpillar shedding its covering. It implies this focused contemplation, this engagement with Jehovah's precepts is what allows the change.
Like that inner work is absolutely necessary for the metamorphosis.
The cocoon is like that sacred space for change.
And then the butterfly, the new creature.
With wings of beauty, it says.
Yeah.
Representing that higher understanding Elder Michael speaks about.
No longer stuck crawling, but soaring. On the wind of the Spirit, representing freedom and truth in light.
And it even mentions the butterfly drinking nectar from the flowers of divine wisdom.
So a totally different source of nourishment, not just earthly leaves, but spiritual understanding.
It's a beautiful analogy for the potential within us, sparked by seeking that deeper knowledge like Elder Michael encourages.
It really makes you think, what caterpillar ways might still be part of our own understanding? Okay, so that's one powerful image. But chapter 2 brings another. New wine in new wineskins.
Ah, yes, another really potent one.
What's the new wine here?
It represents the quickening spirit and the enlightened understanding of the law. Think of it as that fresh, living insight into Jehovah's will that Elder Michael often discusses.
Okay, the spiritual insight itself and the old wineskins.
Those are the ways of the flesh, the former ignorance, old patterns of thinking, maybe a heart that's resistant, hardened. Like in Luke 5:37, you can't put new wine into old bottles or they'll burst.
Right. The old container can't handle the new substance.
Exactly. And this really aligns with Elder Michael's emphasis on being receptive. You can't force this new understanding into a mind or heart that isn't ready or willing.
It just won't work. It'll be lost.
The text is quite clear. But new wine of spiritual knowledge must be put into new wineskins of a prepared heart.
Yea, the heart must undergo a transformation, a renewal through the washing of the water, by the word becoming a fit vessel for the indwelling spirit of truth.
So there's an active part we play, preparing ourselves, our vessel.
Making ourselves receptive, studying Jehovah's law, as it says. It's not passive.
Definitely not. It's an active cultivation, preparing the ground, so to speak.
Okay. Then chapter 3 hits us with another really strong visual, the Valley of Dry Bones, from Ezekiel 37:1.
Oh, yes. The hand of Jehovah was upon me and set me down in the midst of the valley, which was full of bones.
What does this valley symbolize in this spiritual context? Maybe thinking about Elder Michael's perspectives, too.
It symbolizes that state of deep spiritual ignorance, desolation, spiritual death, really.
Like being completely cut off from understanding.
Exactly. Men without the waters of understanding are parched in spirit, as the text puts it. Elder Michael often talks about this kind of spiritual dryness when people are disconnected from Jehovah's truth.
A very bleak picture. But then Jehovah tells Ezekiel to prophesy to the bones.
And that's the turning point. It represents the incredible power of Jehovah's word, the law, the testimony to bring life.
Even to something that seems utterly lifeless.
It's a testament to that transformative power Elder Michael highlights. The word can awaken.
And then the breath enters the bones. What's that signifying?
That's the spirit of knowledge and understanding, quickening the spiritually dead. It connects to Job 23:4. The spirit of Jehovah hath made me, and the breath of the Almighty hath given me life.
So the Spirit brings the actual understanding to life within them.
Yes, and notice the process it describes. It's step by step.
How so?
First, the bones come together precept to precept, line upon line. Then sinews, the doctrine. Then flesh, knowledge. Skin, wisdom. And finally, the breath, the understanding.
Wow, like a gradual reconstruction, layer upon layer.
It suggests that gaining this deep insight isn't usually instant. It's built up.
Precept upon precept, line upon line. Through diligent study, like Elder Michael advises, it's an encouragement for you listening maybe, that understanding often grows incrementally.
Precisely. It's a journey, not just a destination reached in a flash. Okay, so that leads us into chapter 4, walking as children of light.
Right. After all this transformation, what does it look like in practice? This chapter contrasts darkness and light.
Darkness being that spiritual ignorance, the carnal view, and light being the understanding, the truth found in Jehovah's precepts. Elder Michael often makes this distinction clear.
And it draws on Ephesians 5:8. For ye were sometimes darkness, but now are ye light in the Lord. Walk as children of light.
So there's a responsibility that comes with this new understanding.
You have to live differently.
Yes, walk as children of light. Show the transformation through goodness, righteousness, truth, all according to Jehovah's law.
The text says, walk therefore as children of light, for the fruit of the Spirit is in all goodness and righteousness and truth, proving what is acceptable unto Jehovah according to his law.
And it adds another layer. This walk involves reproving or calling out the unfruitful works of darkness.
Which it identifies as false teaching, so standing for truth.
And it gets very practical too. It connects this light to how we treat others, referencing 1 John 2:9. He that saith he is in the light and hateth his brother is in darkness, even until now.
So love for your brother is actual evidence of being in the light. Elder Michael often links understanding the law with this kind of practical love, doesn't he?
He does. It shows the understanding isn't just theoretical. It changes how you live and relate. It has ethical, compassionate consequences.
Okay, so running through all these analogies, all these stages, are two key elements: Jehovah's law and the Spirit. Let's clarify their central role, maybe drawing on Elder Michael's emphasis here.
Well, the text constantly points back to the study and meditation on the law, precepts, and statutes of Jehovah. That's presented as the primary way to gain this understanding. The foundation Elder Michael builds upon.
It's not just wishing for it, it involves engaging with the law.
Right, and it connects us directly to the idea in Romans 12 about the renewing of the mind.
And do not conform to this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind. That transformation happens through this act of engaging with the word.
And the Holy Spirit is described as the breath of the Almighty, power. It unites that comprehension. Synergy Elder Michael.
Interplay. Active engagement with the law and that's what drives us.
That seems to be the core.
Proverbs 4:18. But the path of the just is as the shining sun.
Precisely, a state of total spiritual clarity, where ignorance is absolute.
A person puts on the raiment of light and understanding, becoming that
Reflecting Jehovah's image, able to truly walk in the light, in a vision of spiritual maturity, the fulfillment of the law.
Okay, so let's try and wrap this up. This deep dive into unleavened
Still
bread
can't
and
grasp the fact that you won't be mine.
Michael Johnson's focus on the law and parables. Really delivered a powerful message about spiritual transformation.
Yeah, this great metamorphosis through understanding of Jehovah's law.
And those analogies, the caterpillar, the wineskin,
And the crucial thing for you, listening, is that this isn't just
a way to move from maybe where you are now towards something much more. Maybe a final thought. Consider Thanks so much for joining us on this deep dive today.